we look at this text from both of these gospel writers, from Mark and Matthew, the devil's not going to win this evening. As we look from both of them, what we find in these two gospel texts is the story of Jesus now, where he's hanging on the cross. Leading up to this moment at the ninth hour, which is 3 p.m. local time, Jesus' cry out to God the Father is a callback to David's distress call in Psalm 22:1, where he opens with, my God, why have you forsaken me?" David goes on and says, why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? In other words, why aren't you listening to me? In other words, why have you left me high and dry? But then it calls the question is, why would Jesus cry out to God when Jesus himself is God? Let's see, although Jesus is co-equal with God, he temporarily subordinated himself so that he could fulfill the assignment of the atonement. He took on a human nature that both complemented and conflicted with his divine nature. We're talking about we're talking about Jesus of two natures. He was fully divine and he was fully human. And so with him being fully divine and fully human, there was a little internal conflict, but there was also some internal cohesion. Here's what we talk about here. So he took on human nature, and in flesh, while he was still omniscient or all-knowing, he was limited by his omnipresence. He couldn't be omnipresent because he was in flesh. And although he was omnipotent or he was all-powerful, he still felt the emotions and the things of being human, meaning that he had feelings, he had emotions, he felt pain. Everything that you and I feel, he felt because he was fully human, just as much as he was divine. So what we find here as Jesus is hanging on this cross, if we step back just a little bit, Jesus had been on the cross since 9 a.m., the third hour of the day. And even before that, he had been beaten, had his beard plucked. He had a crown of thorns placed on him so hard that he was bleeding from his head. So he's bleeding from his face, he's bleeding from his head, and he still hasn't healed from the wounds that he suffered from the beating that he received. Because remember, they beat Jesus within an inch of his life. But yet he still went to the cross. And so then we get to the 6th hour of the day, or we get to noon, where it's supposed to be bright outside. The sun is at its highest point, but there's an eclipse. The sun refused to shine. And so now we find Jesus hanging still on this cross now. When we get to the 9th hour of the day, he's on the cross now for 6 hours. Think about the pain that he's in. Remember, we said he's fully human, and his humanity right now is on full display. So what are we saying? That he's experiencing pain. He's got the pain from the nails that are in his hands and in his feet as he's being nailed to the cross. He's still dealing with the pain of the crown of thorns that have been placed on his head that he can't remove or adjust. He's also now dealing with the pain from the beatings he endured. You know, it wasn't like he just get back up, shake it off, and go on about his business. He was brutalized. Along with his pain, he's dealing with discomfort because the way that crucifixion works is you're designed to die, not from bleeding to death, but to suffocate. And so it's human nature to try to get as much air into your lungs as possible. So as Jesus is stretched and as he's nailed to the cross, the more he pushes up, the more pain is in his feet from the nails to get air through. But as soon as his body slumps, the pain goes to his hands because his hands are nailed. So he was in a no-win situation as a human. Some would say, he could just go ahead and get off. But there's a problem with that. So now he's also experiencing ridicule. Now here's the emotional damage. He is getting ridiculed. He's getting mocked by the people who are walking by and spectating, seeing him hang on the cross. Or if he was really the Son of God, he could get himself off. If he was really the Messiah, then he would call down angels to rescue him. But he stayed right where he was. And then the one big human emotion that we all can agree with and that we all can relate with, he feels like he's been abandoned, which is why he calls out, Why have you forsaken me? But even if you back up and you look at the language in that, he says, my God, my God. He has subordinated himself. He didn't say, me, why have I forsaken me? But it's my God, why have you left me? Why have you left me not only in this pain and this agony, not only with this discomfort, but you left me in the middle of darkness. I can't see you because I can't see beyond the skies. I can't perceive you. I can't feel you to my left or my right. You said you would never leave me or forsake me, but yet here I am by myself. But here's what we find out. That Jesus' divine nature could not interfere. His divine nature couldn't interfere because his divinity understood the purpose of why he was there. His divinity understood that interference would void the atonement. God was watching, but God refused to intervene. Because if God intervened, there would be no sacrifice. And without sacrifice, there's no atonement. Without no atonement, there's no redemption. There was an agreement between God the Father, God the Word, and God the Spirit that reconciliation had to be done this way. Bodily sacrifice had to be made in order for humankind to come back into right fellowship with God, or to have the opportunity for right fellowship with God. He stayed there even though his flesh wanted to quit, even though his body wanted to give up. How many of y'all can relate to your body just wanting to quit? I've worked so hard. I've done this. My body is ready to drop. But there's something on the inside of me that keeps telling me to go ahead. There was something on the inside of Jesus that kept him nailed to that cross, even though he felt like he had been forgotten about, even though he felt like he had been left high and dry. He wasn't even talking about the disciples that scattered and left him. He was worried about God, who seemed like he had turned his back on him. But yet it was God from a distance that was cheering him on to complete the task. His human nature wanted to save himself, but it was his divine nature that wanted to save humankind. My God, why have you forsaken me? So you can go the distance and reclaim what's mine. God bless you.